Hi folks, welcome to this video on aggression in sport, okay? So it's important to start with a few definitions to make sure we know exactly what we're talking about. So when we're talking about aggression, what is it exactly? So aggression is an intent to harm outside of the rules. I'm going to break the rules with the sole intention of causing you some harm. Whereas assertion, also known as channeled aggression, now that's very, worthwhile putting down. There's no intent to harm. I don't want to harm you and I play within the rules. However, I might still end up harming you. I could give someone a fair rugby tackle and still end up harming them. So that picture there at the top is a clear act of aggression. That's breaking the rules because I want to harm you. Whereas that picture there shows that lady going into a full-blooded tackle, totally legal. She's not doing anything wrong in that tackling technique, but that's an aggressive act. She's showing a bit of aggression, a bit of force, but we call that channeled aggression or assertion. Okay, so no intent, played within the rules, but there's nothing to say that this lady might end up getting the odd broken rib. It sometimes happens, but the intent isn't there, and that's the key thing. Hostile aggression then is when there's hostility or dislike towards an opponent and you act aggressively. It's as simple as that. Instrumental aggression is a bit of a weird one. It's again, you're deliberately aggressive, you act outside the rules, but it's used as a tactic. Ice hockey is probably the example of the sport where you're most likely to see instrumental aggression. Most fans will boo if they don't get at least one fight in a per game in ice hockey. What's happening here is it's used in games where you often get sin bins. The player in red and white might be having an okay game, but the player in black is having an absolute stormer, playing really, really well. So the player in red and white will deliberately start a fight with him or her so they both get sin binned. The team in red and white lose one of their players for a period of time, but they're not having a great game, so it's no big loss. But the team in black lose their star player for the same amount of time, so that's where you can use it as a tactical advantage. So instrumental aggression, deliberate aggression, you're breaking the rules, but it's used as a tactic. Now this bit's quite brief, causes of aggression. Okay, there's a word I'm going to mention quite a bit from this point onwards. You're probably going to get sick of me doing it. Something called catharsis. Okay, catharsis is the release of aggression through sport or through activity. So what does that mean? Why do we see aggression? We view sport as a release. Why do you go to the gym at the end of the day? To unwind, to get rid of the stress that's built up. Punch the punch bag instead of kicking the cat or the dog when you get in. That's how we're viewing sport, as a release of aggression through physical activity. We view that as catharsis. Okay? As a result of that, the sports environment is viewed separately to the rest of the world. I.e., if you see a punch up on a rugby pitch or a football pitch, okay, it's kind of, both players yellow carded, red carded, sin bin, whatever it is, slap on the wrist. If that same punch up happened in the street or the town centre, something like that, then there'd be arrests, the police would be involved. Why is it seen as acceptable on the sports venue, but not in the rest of the world, what in the rest of society? That's maybe an ethics question, but that's one of the reasons why we do see aggression in sport, particularly in contact sports. Another reason why we see aggression more in contact sports, and I'm going to write that down in particular, is what do we often have in contact sports? We have increased arousal levels. Okay? When you have a sport where there's actual physical contact between people and it's important to be forceful, let's use a word that we just learned, assertion, you can sometimes get over-aroused and that can lead to an increase in aggression. So they're common causes of aggression. What we're going to look at now are the theories of aggression. So what's the theories behind why we get aggressive in sport? Okay, in no particular order, we've got instinct or trait theory. Okay, now where have we come across trait theory before? Trait theory was also linked to personality, i.e. we have traits, they're genetic, they're innate, they last us a lifetime, therefore our personality is consistent and fixed, etc., etc. The same applies here. Trait theory says the following: So aggression is innate. We all have a characteristic. We all have a trait for aggression. Even a vicar stood in church on a Sunday has a trait or a characteristic to be aggressive, okay? It's from evolution. It's survival of the species, survival of the fittest. We've all evolved from monkeys who had to, battle predators and run away from predators, but sometimes fight. That gene has stayed with us. So aggression is innate. It builds up. It has to over the course of the day. Things wind us up and it builds up and it has to be released. We view sport as an acceptable venue for that release. And as we said, this is known as catharsis. So this lady here might have had a rubbish day at work, really fed up with everything, deadlines to me, etc., etc. The aggression has been building up. She's going home, the kids have been playing up recently, her husband's annoying her, to say the least, as we all do. And, that builds and builds and builds. So before she goes home, she goes to the gym. She knocks hell out the punch bag for 10, 15, 20 minutes, an hour, whatever it takes. And she releases that aggression. And that release is known as catharsis. And that is the instinct theory. We are all aggressive. We all have the tendency to be aggressive. It will build up in us. And we release that aggression often in sport because it's viewed as the acceptable venue. And as I say, we know that as catharsis. So that's theory one, instinct or trait theory. Right, so next we have frustration aggression theory, and this is one of those, it does exactly what it says kind of theories. We get frustrated and we act aggressively. So let's have a look at the key points we need to know surrounding this theory. So these are the key points here. This happens when someone has been blocked from achieving their goals. So let's say you're playing a team sport where someone is marking you very, very tightly, okay, denying you space and time on the ball, denying you options, you can't play to your fullest you feel, so you're being blocked, okay? That block causes you to become frustrated. The frustration, surprise, surprise, leads to aggression, hence why it's called the frustration aggression theory. And again, surprise, surprise, told you would mention it a lot, that release of aggression is known as catharsis, or is a cathartic experience. Here's a picture of a prime example of this. Was this 2006? Was it 2010? God knows. You get too old and you forget when things happened. I think it was 2006. You've got England playing Portugal, okay, in the World Cup. And Carvalho, 16, the player laid on the ground, Portuguese defender, he's been given a job. Man mark Wayne Rooney, deny him time, deny him space on the ball, and he does a great job. Nothing illegal. He just does everything absolutely brilliantly. And Wayne Rooney, being the young hothead that he was back then, he's much improved recently, but the young hothead he was, loses it. He gets frustrated because Carvalho is blocking him from achieving his goal, time and space on the ball. That frustration led to aggression. And what did he do? He stamped on him. And what happened as a result? He got sent off, and England had to play the rest of the game with 10 players, and we ended up getting knocked out of that World Cup in that game. So it can have a devastating impact on performance. So the frustration aggression theory, okay, that's what we need to know about that one. Now this one, the aggressive cue hypothesis, this is one that many people often get confused with frustration aggression theory because it uses a lot of similar terms. So we just need to be careful on this. Just make sure we take our time and make sure that we know that there is a difference between this and the frustration aggression theory. So again, frustration is going to build, but this time it's not just because someone is blocking you from achieving your goal, i.e. you're being man-marked out of the game. Many reasons. You're underperforming as an individual. Your team are getting beat. You're now playing into a headwind. The referee's just made a bad decision again against your team. A lot of factors are going against you, is what I'm trying to say. So this is getting a readiness for aggression ready. And then what happens is, one more thing happens and bang, that is your cue to release that aggression. So look at this snapshot from a rugby game, okay? You know, how many players are throwing punches and getting stuck in there? That was probably a bad tackle, or, two players getting wound up with each other, but everyone else has waded in. Now, they weren't involved in the initial tackle, nothing happened to them. All these players who were running in from the outside, it was between two players in there where the aggression's taken place, but all these are thrown in. So all these players on the outside have been getting wound up, the frustration's been building, and as soon as one person throws a punch at someone else, bang, that's my cue to get involved. That's my cue to release my aggression, okay? So that's what the aggressive cue hypothesis is. And finally then, we've got social learning theory. Now this is Bandura again. We learn through observation, copying, and mimicking. So let's get that down straight away. So like we've just said, aggression is learnt by observing and copying others. And if that is reinforced, it causes the behaviour to be repeated. So I bet we've all been at school, haven't we, where a fight broke out and everyone gathered round and started shouting, fight, 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 fight. That just made the fight even worse. You know, the aggression has been reinforced. We've pushed it to another extreme. Okay? So another snapshot from a game. You've got the famous Suarez biting incident, or incidents, sorry, you know, repeat offender in terms of that. Why did he receive such a big ban and fine? It wasn't because it was a particularly vicious bite. It's because we don't want children copying and mimicking that behaviour. You know, we want to disapprove that, and we don't want to reinforce it. We don't want to say, oh, you can bite someone and just get a too much ban. You've got to be banned as you know, to be made an example of. Because like I said, we don't want people copying or imitating that behaviour. Because when are people going to copy and imitate? When it's a role model, when it's someone they want to be like, okay? And Suarez is a role model to a lot of people, football fans all over the world. So it's very, very important that we're aware of this and we do put out sanctions and bans when it's important. That leads me on to the last thing we're going to look at. What are the strategies that we can use to reduce aggressive behaviour? We want assertion, we don't want aggression. So how can we develop assertive behaviour and reduce aggressive behaviour? Right, so what can a coach do? They're the key things that we need to look at now. So number one, a coach can punish aggressive behaviour from their players. I can ban you, I can drop you, I can fine you a week's wages, something like that, to reduce the likelihood of that aggression taking place again. I've worked at a few pro clubs myself over the years. Every club that I've worked for has a code of conduct. So here's how you dress, here's how you act. You know, you are a public figure, you are a role model to people, so here's what you've got to do. So having a code of conduct in play and enforcing that is very, very important. I can also remove that player from the situation if they look like they're about to be aggressive, so I can change the position on the pitch, get you away from the person who's frustrating you, if you're thinking back to frustration aggression theory. I can change the tactics, so you're no longer having to do that role. Or, if I don't want to do any of that, I can sub you, I can bring you off. Okay? If it's rugby, I can interchange you, give you a breather before I bring back on, or I can just think, do you know what, I'd rather finish this game with all my players on the pitch, or on court, or on the field, as opposed to risk leaving you on and getting you sent off. So there's another strategy that can be used. Peer support is often underused and it's underrated. Getting the teammates to say, look, we can't do this without you, you need to stay on. Please don't do anything daft again. Having a word in the ear when you're out there in a competitive environment, tell them to calm down. That is really, really useful. So use of peer support and teammates to help calm them down. Giving that player some responsibility, okay? For example, coming back to Wayne Rooney, his disciplinary record has got much better since he's been made captain of Manchester United and England. You know, he's hardly got any yellow or red cards in comparison to what he used to get. Because he knows that he is now the lead player. He's the guy that all the others are looking up to. So he's got to stay on the pitch in order to be an effective leader. So giving him more responsibility has improved his disciplinary record. We've mentioned it as a cause of aggression. Now let's mention it as a solution. Social learning theory. Give your performers better role models, non-aggressive role models. Be more like him or her and less like the one who's getting sent off all the time. Okay? So it's often a cause of aggression, but it can also be a solution to aggression as well. Encouraging the use of stress management techniques is also highly beneficial. Things like imagery, self-talk, centering. When you start to feel yourself getting wound up, do your 10 deep breaths. Okay? Picture yourself somewhere other than this, back in bed or in a hammock on a beach. Or why is it always a hammock on a beach? I have no idea. Anyway, picture yourself somewhere relaxing, for a few seconds, get yourself out of this area in your mind and relax a little bit. So they're often good for reducing over-arousal, anxiety, and ultimately reducing aggression. Another theory from last year, operant conditioning. Let's reward non-aggressive behaviour. You were assertive, that was a fair tackle, but it was firm, brilliant. I want to see more like that than you going over the top like you have done in the past. So rewarding that non-aggressive behaviour. And finally, this is a mark on the mark scheme, although I don't know why they put it in. But it is a mark, so let's go reduce importance of event. Apparently, that's what a coach should do to reduce the likelihood of aggression. If a coach is saying to their players, hey, look, don't worry, it's not about winning. You know, it's don't have a win at all cost attitude. Well, straight away, that coach isn't going to last very long at that club. But it is worth the mark on the mark scheme by reducing the importance of the event. You know, don't matter. If we get beat, we get beat. I mean, I suppose at junior level, where it's more about performances, that's probably acceptable. But in terms of elite level sport, you're not going to get away with that. But it, like I said, it is a mark on the mark scheme. So that's what a coach can do. The final thing is, what can a governing body do in order to reduce aggression in sport? So your governing bodies, those in charge of the sports, what can they do? What are their powers in order to reduce aggression? I suppose the most obvious one is to ban and fine teams and players. You know, take points off them, take money off them, things like that. Make them play behind closed doors. That's happened quite a bit, particularly when there's been racist-based violence in sports. Okay, that's quite a common practice. Reducing media sensationalism, i.e. when there's an aggressive act, show it on the TV, but, you know, point out that it's bad and not acceptable. Stop showing it going, oh, look at that, and look at it from this angle, and that, because people are going to be watching it at home, actually quite enjoying it. And that's, again, through social learning, is going to increase the chance of it taking place on the, you know, in parks and in local leagues. So we need to really reduce media sensationalism of aggressive acts. Promote your positive role models, the players that have great disciplinary records that are also very good. I know it's going back a long way, but when I was a kid growing up, Gary Lineker, okay, you know, England, what is he, third on the all-time England goal-scoring record, played in many World Cups, European Championships, things like that, played for Barcelona, as well as in the English top league. One of his biggest things was he's never been booked or red carded as a player, and a lot of people don't believe that, but he hasn't. So he was a great role model. He was the one that our coaches used to push on us: be more like him, tackle fair. You can still achieve very high standard level in sport without being aggressive, without being dirty. So, you know, we need modern day equivalents of him. Using experienced officials is very, very important. Okay, now I'm going to show you this picture. It kind of goes against this point, but, you know, hopefully it helps it stick in your head a little bit more. I said I'm useless with dates. Was this the 2010 World Cup final, Holland versus Spain? And that's Xabi Alonso getting kicked in the chest in the World Cup final. Now, Howard Webb, extremely well qualified and experienced official, but never really done a major final before, okay? He was in a situation where, do I send a player off? I think this was within 20 minutes. Do I send a player off within 20 minutes of the World Cup final and risk being slagged off and everything else? Oh, he's ruined the game because, you know, the team was already down to 10 in no time at all. Or do I not? And he didn't send him off. I think he booked him, but that was about it. But the point is that then set the precedence, because then the players thought, well, we can get away with murder here. And there were some awful tackles going in the game. And he eventually did have to send players off, but he should have done that earlier to set the example. So using experienced and qualified officials is very, very important to try and reduce the risk of aggression in sport. So again, promoting and using codes of conduct is very, very important that national governing bodies need to do, as well as just within the club structure, as well as updating the rules. If, you know, there's a particular technique that's getting more and more dangerous. You know, you're back in the day in football, you were allowed to shoulder barge, you're allowed to go studs up into a tackle. Now you're not allowed to do that because of the risk of injury and overly aggressive tackles and things like that. So we can update the rules where we see fit, where we see necessary. Something that FIFA imposed on Luis Suarez was he had to go for counselling. We don't want you biting any more players. There's something a bit wrong with you if when you get wound up you bite someone. Okay, so he had to go for counselling as part of his sentence, as well as the bans that he served. And so far, he hasn't bitten anyone else. Now, I know that's nothing that we, you know, it's not the most amazing statement ever made, but, you know, in terms of that, it seems to have done something. Awarding things like fair play awards, that's going to be beneficial in terms of reducing aggression, because you're promoting the fact that you will be acknowledged for being non-aggressive, okay? And finally, something that's been brilliant in rugby and should be brought into football is the use of sanctions. Things like, if you backchat to the referee, if you swear at the referee over a decision that he or she has made, we'll march you back 10 yards. So this free kick or this penalty is now taking placed 10 yards close to your goal or your try line because of your bad language or because of your back chat to the official. Now, it should be brought into football because it's definitely working, it's cutting down on it. So these are all things that we can bring in, or the governing body can bring in order to reduce the risk or reduce aggressive tendencies in sport. Hope you found this video useful, folks.